Bienvenido. If you are able, please share this show with a friend, leave us a nice review on the podcast player of your choice, or if you'd like to support us financially, sign up for the companion podcast, The St. Nicholas Project, on Gum Road. All these things really help us out. Namaste.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Hail Akatosh! Hail RK! Give glory to Debella and Julianus, Kinnereth and Mara. Hail Stindar! Hail Talos! Hear ye! Hear ye! O my people! Hear the commandments of the 9 divines given to us from on high. Hark! Stindar saith, be kind and gracious to the people. Protect the weak. Heal the sick. Give graciously to the needy. RK saith, honor the earth and its creatures, the spirits living and dead. Mara saith, live soberly and peacefully, honor thy parents and preserve the peace and security of home and family. Zinnerith say, work hard and you shall be rewarded, spin wisely and you shall be comfortable, never steal or you shall be punished. Kinnereth saith, use nature's gifts wisely and respect her power. And Debilla saith, open your heart to the noble secrets of art and love. Treasure the great gifts of friendship. And of course, Talos saith, above all else, be ye good to one another. Good morning!
Good morning.
Good morning!
Skyrim belongs to the Nords.
How are you? How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I am just here full of the mysteries and Hewlett Packard Jumpstart pop-ups which will not go away. Good morning.
Does that count as an epiphany?
Yeah, I don't know. Listen.
I'm listening.
Today's show may not make sense to a lot of people, or to me, or to you.
That's nothing new.
I think maybe it makes sense. But I'm also not sure it makes sense, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Today's more of a grab bag, and I think things will be coherent.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna see. I'm not sure. Because, among many things, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. It's a grab bag of stuff.
I like stuff.
I'm going to relate it to I'm going to tell you why you should listen to the 9 Divines. Except who the real 9 Divines are.
Okay.
Not the fake ones.
Gotcha.
The real ones. And then I'm going to, we're going to talk about the Chinese space. But first, I think we have to, today we're recording this on on 9/11.
Oh, it is 9/11.
It is 9/11. It is 9/11, and that means that we need to make some wrongs right.
Okay.
We need to make some wrongs right.
Yep.
And one of those wrongs, well, I mean, let's put it this way. Is anyone totally happy with how 9/11 turned out? Is it fair to say that we're not?
Yeah, I don't think it really went
Can we
well for
all
anybody.
agree that 9/11 could have gone, that 9/11, 2001 could have gone a little better?
Yeah, I think so.
Is everyone on the same page there?
Yes, we are. We agree with you,
Okay.
Zero.
Thank you. That's all I needed. Okay, so it could have been better, right? And for a lot of reasons it wasn't better. But it is what it is now. And I think we have to deal with the past as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why today on this show, I know that we're not what you might call an accredited university. Right?
I mean, that doesn't mean much anymore.
It doesn't. We're not an accredited university, but we are a university in a sense that we hand out diplomas, markers of education to individuals who have demonstrated both a high degree of knowledge and a high degree of commitment to their education and to their thesis, right?
Right.
We've done that. I think everyone agrees with that. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. We have to, that's why today, and I know this may be slightly controversial, right? But I want everyone just to try your best. Today, MAPS has to give out. We have to make right or wrong. We're giving out a doctorate in architecture to Muhammad Atta. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, that's a little much. I mean, did he do the work, right? And here's the thing. He did do the, I mean, no one was more committed to his thesis, right? I mean, are you familiar with his work?
I mean, he's done some nice demolition.
Well, Atta, when he was in school in Hamburg, because he was in school in Germany for a while.
Oh, was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, all terrorists are highly educated because that's where the college is where you go to get radicalized.
Gotcha.
He had a thesis called, quote, neighborhood development in an Islamic Oriental city.
Oh.
And it examined the old quarter of Aleppo, mostly, and other cities.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look, Western city planners are destroying the neighborhood.
I mean, agree.
Right? And
Yeah.
there he had all these photos juxtaposing traditional architecture with modern. And it was these, like he had these photos of taxi-clogged streets.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then there were taxis and not everything was an Uber.
Yeah.
Right? And then next to like boys having fun playing cricket in the alleys of a traditional place, right? And he saw that he wanted, quote, he craved winding cobbled streets and shaded alleyways carved from honey-colored stone. But this ideal had been violated by concrete and glass boxes of liberal modernity. He said this.
Dude, preach.
And so who was more dedicated to their thesis, in some sense, than Muhammad Atta? Who was like, you know what? Building's bad. Building's bad. And so he took it to its logical limit, right?
Yeah, he did.
So really it wasn't about Islam. It wasn't about they hate us for our freedoms. It was he wanted better city planning.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that he got the recognition that he deserves as a scholar for really taking his own work that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel that he really. I feel like he's been demonized in the public eye for his beliefs. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe among other things that he also did, but in part for his beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine if every academic took their belief, their scholarship to the same intense conclusion as Muhammad Atta, how much different a world that would be. I don't say better, but I do say different. I don't know if it would be better.
We're just measuring impact here.
We're just measuring impact.
Yeah.
And this guy really, I mean, honestly, the greatest problem that the reason that we can't say it was a complete success, strictly from his point of view, Muhammad Atta's point of view of buildings bad,
Right.
was that they erected another one,
Mm-hmm.
which is also ugly, right? Though it's a little bit better. In hindsight, you know, I was looking at the photos in 9/11 back then,
Yeah.
and they were not attractive buildings. I got to give Muhammad Atta that. They were very ugly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's put aside for a minute. Let's all just stop. Let's check our emotions for a minute at the door, and let's just put aside the people burning to death, right? Let's put aside the people jumping out of the windows. Let's put aside the first responders having the building collapse on them, which, you know, if you ask old people in NYC about that day, they'll tell you the firemen actually ran away, and that the whole narrative of them rushing into a burning building is largely made up. But anyway, that's because most people would not run into a giant skyscraper collapse. But anyway, let's put that all aside for a minute. Let's put aside the loss of life, the loss of family. Let's put aside the scars. Let's put aside the 20-year war. Let's put aside all of that, right? And just, is the New York City skyline better now for not having those buildings? Yes or no? I would say yes, right? Now, did that come at a cost? Sure. Right? But who am I to judge history? I don't know. So, today we're awarding Muhammad Atta a MAPS PhD in architecture and city planning.
Really, we should give him one in chemistry as well.
And, well, I don't know if that goes to him or to George Bush, really.
Well, no, the chemistry part is he was able to fireproof his passport so well that it survived a fire of thousands of gallons of jet fuel and was found completely intact among many city blocks of smoldering hot rubble with liquid metal pouring out of it. I mean, it's an amazing feat of chemistry. He should really get a little recognition for that too.
That's true. He did develop. That's true. We have to give him a PhD in chemistry for developing a new laminating process, which fireproofs paperwork to 20,000 degrees. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, really, who else has duplicated those feats?
I don't think it's been done. His secret died with him.
And, you know, the thing is, people still get upset about it, and they'll go, never forget, right? But I'm just saying, maybe what we have forgotten, maybe what we really have forgotten is to appreciate traditional architecture.
Well, we've definitely forgotten that.
You know?
Yeah.
And maybe Muhammad Atta had a little bit of a point. That's all I'm saying. And that he was like, this building is an eyesore. There was really, according to the official story, if you look into Muhammad Atta, it seems to have been mostly motivated by buildings are an eyesore. And he just told the other guys they were gonna. He's like, "This is for jihad," and they're like, "Okay." But then he was like, but in his heart, he was like, "I cannot stand high rises."
Yeah.
And so he just took them out.
I'm just imagining. I'm imagining all the trad architecture accounts that I follow on Twitter, just like listening, nodding their head right now.
I mean, he's got a point. It's awful. It was awful, right? And that's the thing, is that everyone in history had a point. Doesn't mean they justified what they did, but they had a point. They all had a reason. Doesn't mean it was a good reason, but they all had a reason. Like George Washington invited Alexander Hamilton and his gay lover to Valley Forge, right?
What?
Well, of course he did. Alexander Hamilton was super gay. It's not even really disputed at this point.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's why they did. That's why they did a Broadway about him.
Well, that's why they did a Broadway about him, right? Because he was gay. And Washington. It was John Lawrence was the guy who it seems to have been his lover. And anyway, Washington, who never had sex with his wife, and who never had children either, George Washington. He wrote to he wrote to Hamilton at one point and said there's, quote, no fire between the sheets in his marriage. He did. That's the quote from Washington's letters. And it's probably because here's the thing, right? Washington was gay, as most people in worldly power tend to be, since the French Revolution.
We should probably stop giving all those guys credit for America.
Yeah, they're not. See, here's the thing. Here's why they become gay. Is because this is really the reason why homosexuality and large amounts of money and or political power go hand in hand, is that if you have sex with a woman, she could get pregnant and then she has some sort of power over you and can prevent you from your worldly desires of being the most powerful, right? This is why all of the masculinists, all the masculinity Twitter accounts, that talk about picking up women and pickup artistry, are always talking about blowjobs and butt sex.
Really?
Is because they also, it's like, I have a Lamborghini, but I don't actually ever have real sex with a woman because then she might get pregnant and want some of my money. Which is how it always happens.
That's sad, man.
That's how it always happens, and that's why these things go together. And besides the fact that, George Washington was also a stooge of the Dutch East India Company, and the American flag is based off that company's flag. Look it up; it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 1-for-1 almost, except for the stars. And that's why there was a tea party, because that was the company wanted to have a way to sell tea without giving so much of the taxes to the UK. It was all. What I'm saying is, gay George Washington had a point when he sailed across the Delaware and murdered people at a Christmas party. Right? And Muhammad Atta had a point. And everyone had a point. Doesn't mean it was a good point. But we should, just as historical figures, we should look at their points. I mean, Joseph Stalin had a point. The Russians were being very annoying. And so he got rid of a lot of them.
Yeah, he sure
right?
did. Yeah.
But they were and people look back on his millions of people being dead and but they were being super annoying. That's what you have to remember. That's the point, right? They were like, we need more bread, give us more. We don't have any, just all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
how dare they not allow communism to work?
Right.
Yeah.
They were being super annoying. So, from his point of view, right? And Hitler had a point, right? It was really the same point, which is that there are certain groups in the country being very annoying. You know? And now, were they right to be annoyed at them? Probably not. Right? They could have worked it out in a different way. But everyone had a point, is my that's all I'm saying. Right?
Are we going to be given this same lecture about Biden in a year or two?
Yeah, Biden. Biden has a point, which is that Matlock ends at 2.
Our patience is wearing thin.
Right, Matlock is over at 2, and he's ready to go to bed.
Right.
And then people keep asking him to do things after 2 o'clock. And then he's like, my patience is wearing thin. I need to go to bed. Right. So everyone has a point. And I don't think that we should be so brazen as to discard all of Muhammad Atta's intellectual work just because he has a stain of flying a plane into the World Trade Center.
Right. And,
right.
And fireproofing his passport very effectively.
What now?
And don't forget fireproofing his passport very effectively.
Yes, fireproofing is... And also, maybe... I'm not sure what this PhD would be, but he was able to take down another building, Building 7...
Yeah.
Without even ever touching it. It was pretty amazing.
That's like a PhD in, wizardry or something.
Ricochet or something.
Yeah, necromancy.
Yeah, that was just... And it fell in the same way. It fell in the same way.
Yeah.
As a building, which was not... As the buildings... The building hit with the plane... Fell the same way as the building hit, not with the plane.
Yeah, and it fell in perfect synchrony, even though it was only on fire on one side.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing. He is a super villain.
Yeah,
and we still don't know how he did that.
And then you know what else? Well, wasn't there another bit? Was it? I don't know. Oh yeah, there was another building too. There was Building 5. Wasn't that correct?
I don't know about Building 5.
Yeah, Building 5. It was only a 9-story building. And then it was severely damaged also. And it came down too somehow.
Which building had the auditing firm that was auditing the Department of Defense because they lost
Building 7.
a gazillion dollars?
Yeah.
And then that all went away after 9/11 happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was no one even talks about Building 5, but 1 and 2, the towers fell down, and 7, and then Building 5 just caught on fire and did not completely collapse. But then it was demolished as part of the cleanup of Ground Zero. So, and also, you know what Muhammad Atta was able to accomplish is that he was able to fly a plane into the Pentagon, one of the most surveilled places on Earth, without it ever being captured on camera in any way.
He's like a Houdini with that thing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
He did so much. I don't say good. I don't say he did so much good. But he did so much.
Really impressive feats of what really should be classified as magic. Something.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And then And so you need to remember on this 9/11 anniversary, it's been 20 years. It's been 20 years. We had a good, I mean, it was a good war, all told. You know, it had a lot of the Afghanistan war and all of the, it had a lot of things that you could, I mean, just from an entertainment perspective value, right? I mean, where else could you,
well, it did keep us entertained. I mean, it sure did.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like every month for years. It was like the Pashtuns.
And we all just we stood there slack-jawed and just lapped it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember they used to draw big diagrams of like Osama bin Laden as though he had like hollowed out an entire mountain.
Yeah, the hollow mountain graphic. I saw that. I saw that recently too. Yeah,
like
no, it was great.
Hollowed out an entire mountain.
We were led to believe. Yeah, we were led to believe that 30-ish dudes, like goat herding people, had hollowed out this underground complex with 25 different rooms and stairways and passages out in the desert somewhere. I mean, it was crazy. It was comic book villainry stuff. For people that are too young to really remember this stuff, it was the most silly nonsense you could imagine. I mean, you would not believe it. Well, I guess because we all watched the Twin Towers go down and people falling. Like, we watched this over and over and over again for months, like in this hypnotic way. And then after that conditioning, our minds were all softened up into Play-Doh so that they could show us this cartoon of this underground base that looks like it's something out of like a children's Batman cartoon. And we bought it, you know?
Yeah. And no one in that whole time when they were replaying the towers falling over and over again and showing the people jumping to their deaths over and over again, like, I remember being like, okay, we get it, you know? No one ever talked about city planning, which is what Otto would have wanted.
You got robbed.
Which is what I think we're correcting that mistake now.
That was one of our first episodes was about city planning. We were way out ahead of this issue.
Well, that's true. We were. But the great thing, here's the official story of 9/11. This is the official story. This isn't any conspiracy at all. This is just what they say happened. Is that a bunch of guys, educated in Western universities mostly, went to Florida, and they learned how to fly Cessnas. And then, using knives and box cutters, they all got on planes on the same day. And they hijacked these planes and flew them into various buildings. The World Trade Center towers, of which there are videos. And then the Pentagon, of which there is no video. That no one has ever explained that. And that the Pentagon was under investigation by Congress for where its black budget of several $1 trillion was going. And then the only portion of the Pentagon that the plane hit was the portion with all those records. Coincidentally.
It's amazing how that happened.
And then after Muhammad Atta flew the plane into the building, his passport came out of the plane, out of his pocket, and out of the building, and landed on the streets of New York, well away from the buildings, perfectly intact, after just having been involved in a jet plane running full steam into a skyscraper. And then they found it. They found it near instantly and put photos up of it. And then the same day, they said, this is Osama bin Laden did this. We've already figured out who did it. We had no idea it was going to happen. But nonetheless, in the past 3 hours, we figured out exactly who did it.
That's like a world record in government solving something.
It's amazing. And then that means we have to go to war overseas, right? And we don't know where he is. We think he's probably... Now, were the people in the planes Iraqis? No.
No.
Does that matter? No, because
They were
Iraq
kind
may
of
have funded them.
They were Saudis, weren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Iraq may have funded them, right?
Yeah.
So we have to go to Iraq because there's an axis of evil. And we're going to see if Osama bin Laden is there. We're going hunting. This is all to hunt down Osama bin Laden, to get back for what he did. But then look, the Saddam Hussein, right, maybe is hiding Osama bin Laden. So we have to bomb the whole country. Now, then we figured out, wait a minute, maybe he's in Pakistan. We'll go over there too. And then we didn't find him for a while. And then we said, you know what? The problem is Afghanistan is not being sufficiently helpful. We have to enter Afghanistan. That was the official reasoning, is they're not being sufficiently helpful in our hunt for Osama bin Laden.
It's funny we never invaded Saudi Arabia, where all their support and funding came from.
Correct.
You know, it seemed like maybe that would have been a natural
choice. And also where
choice.
arguably Muhammad Ali would have wanted, since they have Dubai with all the high-rises. I mean, if Muhammad Ali's dream was... I mean, he would have wanted those to be burned down too. You know? So it was really... We didn't honor his memory, is what I'm saying. But also, then we went to... then we went to Afghanistan. And then... In 2011, in a cave, we had super dogs.
Yeah, I remember
that
those.
worked with SEAL Team 6.
Yep.
And super dogs were these German shepherds that had been military trained, and you know what they had? They had steel teeth.
Mm-hmm.
This is really what they said. They took out their regular teeth, or maybe capped their regular. I'm not sure. With steel razors.
Yeah.
So that the dogs would be more vicious when they bit people. Now, how the dogs would eat after this is never made quite clear. Seems like that would be a problem for the dogs to have, like, if you had like razors instead of teeth, you'll be cutting up your mouth a lot, I think. I don't know. And these dogs who not only had razor teeth but had walkie-talkies in their ears like Secret Service agents and could take commands from a radio base, like stay, all right, go, and the dog would go stay, and then attack, right? And the dogs got in there and they caused such a ruckus that in this cave, then SEAL Team 6 was able to go in and kill Osama bin Laden. And then mysteriously, most of that SEAL Team 6 dies within the following years. From unrelated reasons.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, huh?
They just all sort of die.
Yeah.
Right? But immediately after, we took Osama bin Laden and we put him in a casket. We never took any photos of his body.
Well, there was that one that looked really fake.
Yeah, okay. But we had a closed casket funeral at sea. Because, quote unquote, this was a Muslim burial. Now, was he at sea when he was killed? No, he was in a cave in Pakistan.
I thought it was a house.
Or a house, or whatever. And we took his body, put it in a casket, and then took it to sea, put it on a boat, and then shoved it into the ocean.
Seems like a lot of work.
Now, is that a Muslim burial? No, not really.
No.
Traditionally, the Muslims have not been a seafaring people. They don't have a lot of sea rituals. Like, there's not like... you know what else they can do is they can be buried on land. As is typical.
Yes.
As is typical. And also, why are we so concerned with giving Osama bin Laden a nice official Muslim burial?
Yeah.
None of it made any sense, right? Okay,
Should let the dogs eat him.
Now we've got him in 2011, but we still have to hang around Afghanistan for 10 more years for reasons.
Yeah.
Which are never articulated. And now, was there a map in Dick Cheney's possession in which he had carved up Iraq into the various regions he would give to oil companies? Yes.
Yes.
Was there that? Yes, there was that. Does that mean it was for oil? Yes.
Yeah, it does mean it.
Yes, but again, he had a point, right? Dick Cheney had a point in that, Muhammad Atta's point was buildings bad, and Dick Cheney's was cars go fast.
Yeah.
And we need oil for cargo fast. Was Dick Cheney one of the primary stockholders of Halliburton,
Yes.
the defense contractor? Yes. Does that mean it was for personal profit? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
But, now, did Jeffrey Epstein have in his New York apartment a painting of George W. Bush throwing paper planes into collapsing Jenga towers? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he did. Does that mean that George Bush knew about it and that this was planned? Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. It does. Because George Bush's point was that Saddam Hussein had made my father look stupid by America sort of losing the first Iraq War.
I will avenge your reputation, Daddy.
Yeah. I will avenge your reputation, Daddy. And then that's how it went. And so what I'm saying is everyone had a point. Whether it's building bad, cargo fast, or 30 men can hollow out a mountain. Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what the take home is that America is a serious place where things happen for valid reasons. And I think that's just I just felt like we needed to correct some wrongs here.
You really squared that away nicely.
I did. So congratulations to all of our graduates this semester.
Yay.
Okay. So, yes, there's that. We had to get that out of the way. It's 9/11. Freedom fries. Kenny Chesney. Whatever else, right? It's great. It's all good. First responders are heroes, right?
Yeah.
Except police. Now they're all bastards, apparently.
Depends on the month,
Depends on the month. We gotta back the blue, or the blue are fascist. I'm not sure what we're on this time.
Right.
Anyway, some other things that I want to talk about. We got the 9/11 squared away. The Chinese have joined the ranks of First Nations. I don't mean the Native Americans.
No.
I mean the First Worlders. In that they have now a Chinese space station. Did you see this?
No.
They have a Chinese space station.
How fake does it look?
Well, it's called the Tiangong Space Station.
Hmm.
And it's being constructed.
Yeah.
And recently, Xi Jinping did a television interview with the 3 Chinese astronauts on the Chinese space station. And it was great because you really saw how zero G would affect the human body, which is that you can stand upright, completely still, and act completely normally with nothing happening at all. Because in this
they're
video
highly
where
trained.
he's talking to the Chinese astronauts, they are in a little space station looking backdrop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just standing there. They're just standing there. Like, you could have shot this in a garage.
Maybe they
just
have
standing there.
maybe they have Velcro on their shoes or something.
Well, yes, if you look at their shoes, they have straps over their shoes,
Okay.
which is supposedly holding them down.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at it and you're like, these guys are simply standing on the ground. And it just looks so obvious that they're standing on the ground because there are no space stations. No one's in space. I realize that's a big claim, but I think it's probably true because it's all it means is the Chinese haven't got their Hollywood techniques down yet. And they were like, how do we do zero gravity? And like, we can't. Okay, just put little loops around our shoes and just stand there and sort of like move back and forth your weight from one foot to the other so it looks like you're floating. I could 100% replicate this exact scene in my garage. It is not, there's no hair floating, there's no objects floating, there's none of it. Right? And it's like 2 minutes, and that's all they got. Now, when I say there's no one in the space station, people go, Sumo, but we've seen people in the space station. I know. And you've seen the passport of magic, right? And you've seen so many interesting things, and yet you still look. Let me explain to you how the International Space Station works. There are two main sets, right? There's the one room where they give interviews, and it's sort of a squarish room, and they're always in the same position. They're always looking at the camera. It's always this because the camera is one here, and it's a set, and there's not a fourth wall, so they never turn it around because it's not there, right? And what they do is they film in this one place, and they hang upside down. And then when they need to show you something floating, they just drop it or toss it to each other and then make it in slow motion. And then it looks like it's floating. That's all it is. That's really all it is. And the reason they get female astronauts is so they have big wavy hair that looks like it's floating, but it's just hanging upside down. All you have to do is look at the videos of them in space and then say, if they were hanging from a harness upside down, would it look any different? And the answer is no. You'll be shocked. Then there's a second set, which is a long tube, which is oddly the exact apparent dimensions of the inside of a airplane. It's like as big. And it is a long tube, and this is where they show you all of their flips and their things. This is the only place they do all their flipping. They never do all their flipping and stuff really in the set room, the square room, the interview room, because it looks too fake. They've tried it a few times, and it's very clunky, and you can sort of see where their shirts are pinched up by the wires that they then green screen away. But anyway, they have the long tube where they do their flips and their rolls, and they show you 0G, and they like toss stuff to each other. But that's just in an airplane going down. And there's never very long clips of this because you can't just dive bomb forever.
It's only like 20 seconds or so that they can do it, right?
Right. It's only like 20. So they get these 20-second clips like, yeah, we're in space. Look at me tossing my pencil to my buddy. We're in space. I am singing, do-do-do. And then it cuts out, right? And they go to the interview and they do another one maybe later. And that's how it works. That's how it works. I know that that's a level of deception most people are not prepared for. Like if that's fake, like if the International Space Station is fake, it makes people really begin to wonder about the world, right? So I don't blame you if you don't accept it. I'm just putting it out there, and one day you will accept it because it will be obvious. Much like the moon landing, which no one ever goes back to the moon. Because you can't go to the moon. Right. Okay. So, anyway. So, we have that. We talked about 9/11. Gave Muhammad Ali his just accolades.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese space station. Also on the docket today to talk about. And like I said, I think this is all going to connect in a way that I don't even suspect. But Now, okay. I have to give you I should have done this earlier, and I apologize.
We forgive you.
I'm going to give you a notice of liability, listener. Because this is a sovereign citizen thing. You're not as guilty if you don't know. Everyone sort of knows this, right? If you don't know the truth, you're not as guilty for not following it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I should have given you a notice of liability, like, listen, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to explain to you why the space station isn't real. And then because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And then that will be in your mind. You'll be like, I don't want my worldview shattered like that. Because the next time you see astronauts on the quote-unquote space station, and they're always in the same room all the time forever, and then you notice, like, why are they always in the same room, except when they're in the one room where they're doing the flips? You begin to question things, and you may not want that, right? So in the same way, I'm giving you a notice of liability. I'm going to tell you about 3 people that are, well, anyway, the next bit may also shatter your worldview a bit. So here's your notice. If you don't want to listen, skip forward like 15 minutes. Okay?
We are all now disclaimed.
Okay. I'm going to put a question to you. Who is John Durham?
He's the dude with the mustache.
Yeah, what does he do?
Who didn't really write any reports.
Right, he didn't really. What was his job?
He was supposed to investigate. I don't even remember now. Election fraud or the Russian collusion thing. Yeah, that's what he was going to investigate. Right.
He was supposed to.
He was going to drain the swamp.
He was supposed to look into the Russian collusion something.
He was going to lock her up.
He was going to do something.
Yeah.
Right? No one was quite sure. And now he's been hired by Biden, even though he was hired. I don't know. My question to you is, or my statement to you, is John Durham even a real person? Mike Yelvis brought this up to me the other day, and I looked into it, and he's 100% correct. John Durham, this guy that's at the center of this Russian probe thing, is not real. I don't know. He doesn't exist.
Interesting.
Maybe that guy is an actor, or maybe he's computer. I don't know. But there's no video. Like, John Durham is one of the biggest names in the Russian collusion nonsense, right? And all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that there's no video of him at all.
Really?
No. There's like 4 stock photos of him that get reused in every article. And some of them have a little play button on them. And you think, oh, he's in a video in this. When you click it, and then it's just still photos, those same still photos while other people talk over it. One of them is he's in front of a microphone. The other is he's in front of an American flag in like a professional photo. And that's pretty much it.
Are you telling me that you've tried to find video of John Durham and haven't found any?
It's impossible. Maybe it's not. I don't say it's impossible. Maybe someone can find it. I looked around. I couldn't find any moving pictures of John Durham.
Well, you'd think there would be a lot of. I mean, he was such a high-profile figure for a while. You'd think there would be a lot of video of him.
Right. You would think. He was the special counsel for, like, both the Russian collusion and, like, the election fraud guy. You'd think he would have been interviewed or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't. He was apparently, quote-unquote, appointed by William Barr, right? And I don't know. He just has very little. His Wikipedia page gives no family ties whatsoever. He just sort of springs out of nowhere.
I mean, think about that. William Barr doesn't really want to investigate this thing, so he just makes up an investigator and appoints him to the position of special counsel or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, a lot of the Q people were hoping on, like, something, and then the person doing it is imaginary. Right? That's the thing. But here's what you got to realize, listener, is that most I know this is getting a bit much for people. I get it. I'm just telling you what I've observed over the years, is that most of the government is imaginary.
I mean, most of the Afghanistan army was imaginary.
The Afghanistan army was imaginary. Like all of these things that you think are like these big to-dos, there's no one there. Like it's just some names on paper or like an organization on paper, and then if you go like knock on the door, like no one will answer, and then you open it slowly like hello, and the room is dark and no one's there. It's just empty desks. That's how the U.S. government sort of works.
It just makes me think of that weird day during the COVID lockdowns when the empty FBI building was blasting like Gloria Estefan tunes out into the street, but there was nobody in the building.
Correct. No one is ever there. And this sounds crazy. But it's all mind control. It's all like they get you to think like, oh, we have to do this thing because like, and if you just didn't do the things, nothing would, because there's nobody there. Like there's literally, it's a phantom. And I know that sounds crazy, but
hey, did you ever get the vaccine education squad to come out to your house and try to educate you about vaccines?
Right, that never happened, and I told people it would not happen.
I never saw one either.
Because that never existed.
Yeah,
that never ever existed. The vaccine it all exists just to make you to get you to do what they want to do, whoever they even are. You know, like Joe Biden is not in control of this thing.
True.
Right? Whoever they even are, it all exists just to get you to do it out of fear. So right now, so they were like, we're going to send vaccine education squads to your house to vaccinate you. Remember that? And all the right wing was like, you come to my door, you try to give me a shot, I'm going to give you a shot. Boom! You know? And then it never happened. They got some video of like some ladies in a clipboard walking around the projects, and they put that on, and that's all that happened.
Yep.
And you don't even know if those ladies were in the vaccine. They could have just been, what do you call them? The ladies that go around and check on mothers that can't feed their kids.
Yeah, they were like Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah,
people,
probably
social workers.
There was just video of that reused.
Yeah.
That's probably all it ever was. It was these Department of Human Services ladies going around. And the thing is that all the right-wing people get so freaked out about two women in pencil skirts with a clipboard. Like, don't be afraid of two women in pencil skirts with a clipboard. Right? And because they attach all this stuff of what's going to happen to that, and it never does. And they just never mention it again. And then people don't ever like, huh? It never happened. And so like all this OSHA stuff where they're like, oh, you have to do like my prediction is that a lot of people will freak out. They'll go get the shots because they're afraid. Or employers will try to mandate it because they are afraid. They'll try to request. But if you just don't do it, nothing will happen.
Yep.
And they will not talk about it in 6 months. It will just be like...
I had a job one time where I was required to take a drug test.
Uh-huh.
And I worked at that job for like 4 years. And every time they would tell me to go get drug tested, I'd be like, oh yeah, sorry boss, forgot. I'll get right on that. And I never did it for like 4 years until I eventually left the job and went somewhere else.
Yeah, none of it matters.
And it doesn't matter. They don't care.
No one... It's all... And this is how that stuff would... Because no one has come to your door to force a vaccine on you. And really, people aren't really even getting... Like, I've had places so far that have been like, well, you have to get the vaccine. And I just be like, no. And so far, I just keep going. I don't know if that will ever change. But if I'm just like, no, you know, they're like, oh, well, okay.
Right. You're living proof that these, I don't know how much you want to go into detail about that, but you're ignoring these things and nothing is happening to you.
Yeah. I go into a lot of like hospitals. Like a lot of hospitals. And so far, no one has asked me for anything. Like ever. maybe that will change. Who knows, right? But a lot of it is, I think if it's just fear-based mind control compliance, and if you just don't do the thing, nothing will happen because all of the quote-unquote people trying to quote-unquote enforce the thing do not exist. And I mean that they don't exist. Like, they're not real. Like, okay, John Durham, the guy that's supposedly at the center of the election fraud thing and the Russian collusion thing, you know what he was most famous for is, apparently, according to his Wikipedia, was he was the special prosecutor on a case involving a guy named Whitey Burglar.
Oh, Whitey Bulger.
Whitey Bulger and Stephen the Rifleman.
Yeah, that was they were mobsters.
Yeah, they were mobsters, right? And so you remember these guys who maybe they were real. I think they probably were. But then he's like, and Janet Reno was all about it. And they're like, oh, he did this too. And you're like, I don't remember him doing this thing with Whitey Burglar or Bulger. I always say Burglar.
Bulger.
It looks like Whitey Bulger and Stephen the Rifleman. Flemmy. Which, again, I'm not 100% clear those because it's just too, like, it's too Hollywood mob boss. Like, oh, I'm Johnny the Fish.
Yeah.
No one does that in real life. They're like, oh, they're mobsters, right? So he's Stephen the Rifleman and James Whitey. He's Whitey, but is that Bulger? Like, is that I don't know, maybe. But he apparently oversaw the task force of FBI agents appointed by Janet Reno or whatever, and you never heard about him then either. You never heard about him ever. And then all of a sudden he's there and there's 4 pictures of him. So he's allegedly been like at the forefront of like huge Washington cases. That one, a CIA interrogation, taped destruction, a torture investigation in 2009 with Eric Holder, Attorney General Eric Holder. All that stuff, right? And he was appointed by William Barr.
Hang on one second. Somebody's knocking on my door.
Okay, I'll keep ranting. Appointed by William Barr to investigate the 2016 Russian interference in the U.S. elections, and there's no video of this man. How can that be? Let's wait on Smokestack to reappear.
I'm back. Sorry,
Okay.
there was a...
How can it be? How can it be there's no video of this man?
I don't know. I don't know how that can be. I think it's a bit ridiculous.
I think it's a bit ridiculous.
I want proof of life, John Durham.
Yeah, he has an accolade in Wikipedia. It says his accolades. In November 2011, Durham was included in the New Republic's list of Washington's most powerful, least famous people. So, I don't know.
Most powerful, least real people.
He was involved. I mean, he was in the Mueller report thing. Remember how that was like the top news for like 2 years, 3 years?
Oh, yeah.
And he's never on camera. How can this be? He's probably not real, right? The other thing, so I give you, that's because that's why I had to give you a notice of liability, because these things are so. The other people who are not real is Adam Lanza, the quote unquote shooter of quote unquote Sandy quote unquote Hook.
Yeah.
Okay, Adam Lanza also has no anything about him. Everything about him just looks like it was poofed out of thin air.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to have a big online presence. He was a kid.
I understand that, but just look at the supposed photos of this.
Well, there's that one famous photo of him with the bowl cut staring at the camera like a deer caught in the headlights.
Right. Exactly. Now, he does not have a Wikipedia page.
You'd think he would.
You would think he would. He does not. There's no, they do. They haven't. I wanted to make sure. Oh no, there's not. No, there's not. Now if you, because used to nothing happened, and now if you do it for it, it just links to Sandy Hook School shooting wiki. So he doesn't have one. Now you think that he would, right? He's under this perpetrator thing. And I know people are like, listen,
is he supposedly still alive, or did he die in the
self-inflicted gunshot wound?
Okay.
Shot himself.
All right.
Right. And I'll give it. Here's why I brought him. So recently, Remington has been sued by somebody for the Sandy Hook case.
Oh yeah, this is awesome.
Right, Remington, because they're like, how this is ever going to work. Well, it's not going to work because it would be like suing a hammer maker for someone hitting someone with a hammer.
Yeah, it's
like it doesn't function. And so Remington asked for. The Remington's lawyers said, okay, well, you have to prove damages. Please give us all of the educational records, the attendance records, the grades of all the students at Sandy Hook that were killed. And then they just flipped out. Everyone's like, what? Like, why do you need that? And they never produced it. Maybe they will. They never produced these documents.
Well, they got to write them first.
They have to, because they don't exist. because they weren't real. And they told you they weren't real because they always tell you. And they took the kids that were allegedly dead at Sandy Hook and they put them in the Super Bowl to sing a song. Like the year after. Does anyone remember this? I've talked about this before.
Is that video still up? I'd like to link that in the show notes.
Yeah, it's probably on BitChute or something. We'll find it. And you look at the kids singing, and they're like, "This is these are the kids from Sandy Hook's that didn't die," and you look at them, and they have a picture, and they're all one for one the same children that allegedly quote unquote died. Like it's not mistakable. And you're like, "Oh, okay, this is nothing." So like the biggest school shooting of the 2010s was also not even real, and the people didn't die, and the guy that did it never existed, just like George Floyd did not exist.
Oh boy, okay.
He did not have a teacher named Waynell Sexton in second grade that kept his drawings where he talked about how one day he wanted to be a scientist. He didn't have that.
Of course he wanted to be a scientist. It's like,
right.
Everybody, let's all be scientists.
Right. That's not real. In the middle of the height of the COVID crisis, there were not people just running around downtown that city without any masks on during the whole thing, right? There was no reason to have perfect minute-long shots of this guy's face as he's quote-unquote dying and just be zoomed in on it perfectly. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, what were all those witnesses doing out walking around in the street in the middle of COVID lockdown?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just isn't. He wasn't killed by a guy named Derek Chauvin, who's also not real. Derek Chauvin, chauvinist is like a nationalist. That's what that means. And Derek is an old term for hangman. It's to hang the national. That's all that means. Derek Chauvin, who for some reason was a cop, right? But had basically a mansion in Florida.
Yeah, man, getting paid.
Who's getting paid? All that happens is these people do these things and then they just disappear from the public eye. They don't even have to go anywhere. George Floyd the guy that played him could just grow a beard and then just pretend. Be like, hey, you like George Floyd? He'd be like, I know, I think about him all the time. And that's all it has to do.
He's always with me every time I look in the mirror.
The Columbia disaster did not happen. Right? The space shuttle. The guy that allegedly died on there, guy with his same name, same educational background, and who looks identical but 20 years older, currently teaches at a college in Arizona. He teaches aerospace engineering. And he's the same name, he has the same face, he's the same age, he's the same, everything about him is the same, and that's true for all of them. And I know people are like, okay, you're just saying everything's fake now. Not everything is fake. But remember, I want you to remember that Muhammad Atta's passport was found perfectly intact after being inside of a jumbo jet speeding into a tower, into a skyscraper, in which everything melted. And yet, his passport somehow got out onto the streets and was found perfectly intact. Just think about that.
It's like the one object that wasn't vaporized was
It's
his
the
passport.
one object that wasn't exploded in instant. Now, did Muhammad Atta exist? I don't know. I told you about all of his educational things and his thesis. Here's the thing. All of that paperwork is quote is just secondhand knowledge and what they say happened, because none of it's all been quote unquote classified. Like all of his educational records, you can't get direct documentation of because it's classified. So even his thesis, there's no copy of. It's just people telling us what is in the thesis who claim to have worked for the government and seen it. So is that even real? Was he even the guy in the plane? Who knows? But what you need to understand is that they just lie to you. It's very simple. If you want to control people, one of the easiest ways is just to lie. Just make it up. Make up what happened. People do this all the time. They want a day off work. I'm sick today. People lie all the time. Like, if you like the primary reason people have dentist appointments is to go to other job interviews. Like that's one of the main lies. Is like, oh, I have a dentist appointment, and really they're going to a job interview.
But Sumo, our system of democracy and representative republic, doesn't it select the noble among us to lead?
No.
The honest and the upright. It doesn't select the honest and the upright through the process of politics and elevate them to positions of power?
No, it doesn't. Thank you for asking, though.
Do you mean to tell me that they lie, like just like regular people do, except they have billion-dollar budgets behind their lies?
They lie, and they also have every incentive to lie, and people want them to lie. The public wants them. They're not even not representing the public, really, because the people want them to tell them lies. Like, tell me that we're gonna finally have I don't know, gay Nazis in space, and they're like, we will have gay Nazis in space, and they're like, yay, that's what I wanted to hear. Space Force, that does it. That's not what does that even do? The Space Force. That's like some guys with a satellite or something. There's no Space Marines. That just was what people wanted to hear. That sounded cool. Just like they've told you you're going back to the moon. Every president has said that for the past 30 years, and it never happens, and it never will. But people want to hear that. People want to hear that they're the good guys, and they're, and so they tell you that, and they want to be mad at someone, so they give you someone to be mad at. And they just say things. And the thing is, anyone can just say things, but you think that they matter, and so then you react to it.
Right. It's like the American people struck a deal with them and said, okay, we know you want to run the American economy into the ground and then sell it for scrap. And you can do that as long as you make up a really fancy story where we can all feel like victims and heroes at the same time while you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Other things, and the thing is, it's always been like this. Like I mentioned this on the Twitter, people had various levels of belief. But all of the suffragettes were men. They were all trannies. All the women for
oh man,
all the women for the women's vote. I mean, they never had children, right? All of them. They all wore collars up to their chins to hide their Adam's apple, which was not the style at the time. They just did that. They had like they were going back in style like 50 years. Like most women didn't wear like frilly collars as though they were Victorian queens up to their necks. They just didn't hide their Adam's. They all look like men. And then Susan B. Anthony, it's in the name because remember they always tell you Susan B. Anthony. Susan is Anthony. Susan's Anthony. Right? It's. I know that people are like, no, it's. Get on your computer right now and look up Susan B. Anthony. And tell me that's not a man in a dress.
I mean, she is rather mannish.
It's a man in a dress, always wearing a collar that covers her Adam's apple. Her real name is probably Anthony, which is why she chose that. And it's this is how politics has always happened. It has always happened this way. It's always deception. It's always lies. It's always people like George Washington and Hamilton being super gay. It's always that way but here's the good part, is that once you realize it's fake, you can sort of it doesn't matter. Like, compare like like when you look at it, when you Google Susan B. Anthony, there's like a children's book about her that comes up too in the images. And they draw her to look like a lady. But then you look at her actual photos and it's like, that's a man. There's no way that's not a man. You know, it's just so, it's obvious. Okay, so that's the way it's been forever. Like, I don't even know if George Washington even fought at Valley Forge. He just brought Hamilton and his gay lover up there to have sex with. Because he was never having sex by his own admission with his wife. And he never had any mistresses or affairs or anything that would indicate he was heterosexual in any way. And I think he just got people up there and told them, yeah, we got to go fight the British and the thing. And they would go fight and this whole big thing. And he was probably just in a cabin with Hamilton.
Do you think maybe you've blackpilled a little hard?
No, it isn't blackpilling at all.
Okay.
It isn't blackpilling at all.
All right.
It is freeing. Because
it is not, I'll say over the course of making this show, I have learned to a much greater degree not to take seriously what a bunch of selfish retards in Washington think or say or do. And it has been very freeing.
Yeah, it's completely freeing because if you just pay attention, nothing they say ever happens. Like, let's go back to the time.
None of their horrible predictions ever come true.
And none of the things they threaten ever happen either.
Yeah.
It never happens. Like, and you just got to pay attention to that because when you go back, let's go back to I don't know, when was the beginning of the start of the crises? Obama, maybe Bush. But let's just for sake go back to the Donald Trump's election. Okay, 2016. All the things Trump said and implied might happen to Mexicans. Did any of it happen? No. None of it. All the things that people implied would happen to white people and white genocide. Did any of it happen? No. None of it happened. Did anyone's health care get stripped away by... But no. Did anyone get given health care? No.
No.
Did Obama give it? No, not really. Did... I can't even...
He just made it a little bit crappier and a little bit more expensive. That's what he did. Yeah.
If you even use it, which you don't have to because the laws, it's like this whole, it's just buying from Blue Cross or whatever through a government website.
It's the same thing it was before.
It's the same thing. Are there Muslim terrorists suicide bombing in your streets? No. Are there white nationalists knocking on your door to kill you? No. Was your house burned down by riotous mobs of black people?
No.
None of it. Did everyone you know die of COVID?
No.
No. None of it ever happens. It's all made up.
Yeah.
Now, there is some basis
in fact,
reality.
nobody I know died of COVID.
I know. Me neither. Because it's not real. Because it's just flu season. Now, people have that because you get the flu, and now if you get the flu, they stick you on a ventilator, and then you die.
Yeah.
But it's your own panic about it, right? In most cases.
No, really, just as a quick interlude about panic. Someone I know got COVID. He's a young guy. I think he's pretty healthy. Got sick. He really freaked out. Really scared.
Yeah.
Kept getting sicker. Thought he was going to die. He called me up. We talked about it. I said, listen, man, what's affecting you here is the propaganda. You've been saturated, even if you don't believe in it, you've been saturated in fear messaging for over a year on every channel, 24/7. You're going to die, 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 you're going to die forever, all the time. And it is affecting you. And what you need to do is see through that. You are a healthy person. You need to lay out in the sun. You need to chill, and your body will heal. This is not a serious or very dangerous disease for you. And sure enough, he chilled out, and 2 days later, he said, I'm completely well. Thank you for talking me out of that. I was freaked out.
I know. You can kill yourself through anxiety easily.
Absolutely.
People do it.
Yeah.
People do it all the time. And also through the choices you make while anxious.
Yeah.
Doctors do it to you, and you do it to yourself.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. It's like I was running a fever this week, and my first thought was not I'm going to die of COVID. My first thought was, if I am wrong and this is real, my only concern is that number 15 would be right.
That would be terrible.
That was really my only thought. It's like if I wasn't worried. I was like, if I die of COVID, then he'll just say, "Told you so."
Yeah.
And that was my concern.
We really can't have that.
My only concern was losing the argument with number 15.
Yeah.
Through death of COVID. Now, of course, what actually happened was that I just had a fever and then it went away. Because that's what always happens. Because sometimes people get fevers, and we used to understand that didn't require a public health crisis. Right? But my first thought was like, now watch, I'm going to actually die of this, and then number 15 would be like, told you so. And I was like, that was the only reason I was concerned.
Yeah. You can't live your life in fear, Sumo.
Well, I'm not, I just don't.
Even of number 15 being right.
Yeah, it's true. I can't. None of the things they predict ever happen. The collapse of the dollar isn't happening. Maybe one day, hey, who knows? But like Peter Schiff has predicted 9 of the last 2 economic collapses. They just say it all the time, and occasionally there's a bust, and then like, see?
The bust is just profit-taking season. They do that.
Yeah.
They're slaughtering the animals.
Right. And that's, it's just how it is. It's not, will the US dollar continue into eternity? No, obviously not. It's made up, and like all made up currencies, it will go away at some point, but it's just, don't worry about that. All this stuff is not Operation Jade Helm. Which didn't happen. None of it ever happens.
Deep cuts right there.
Nothing ever happens except people get afraid and they act out and become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
This goes back to playing death games. You know, you get hurt when you play death games. So don't play the death game.
Don't play the and like, so I know that people are like these but people but they are rolling out vaccine passports and stuff, and like, yes, I know, but again, none of it occurs if people are not afraid of the things and of each other, really.
Yeah,
like you bring it all about through your fear-based consent to something.
Oh, here's another great story on that, on talking about fear. a listener to the show. I won't name him because I don't want to respect his privacy. But he was worried about losing his job because he didn't want to get a vaccine.
Right.
And this was going on for some time, and there was all sorts of pressure, and he hasn't been wearing his mask and all this stuff. And we talked about it on occasion. He's a very cool guy. And he told me, he said, "Hey, listen, I went out on a limb. I asked my boss. I told my boss I don't want to do this." And the boss said, "Yeah, I don't want to do this either, man." And so the two of them together constituted, a sizable chunk of this team they were on that the company couldn't afford to lose. And so they backed down. They said, "We're not doing this." And they backed down. And the reason he was able to outmaneuver this thing is because he did not give in to fear. Right? He went out on a limb. He found an ally, and together they overcame it. But if you're afraid, you can't do things like that.
Yeah.
It's a great lesson. I'm very happy for this man.
Yeah, it's all because that's like the COVID people are not going to come knock on your door and give you a shot. I am skeptical that ever happened in history. It probably did from time to time, but I think a lot of that is retcon propaganda.
Yeah.
Of the Nazis are going to knock on your door, the Gestapo is going to knock on your door. People go to the concentration camps themselves.
Yeah.
Just like they do now in Australia. They're like, "Oh, I'm sick. I need a test. Oh, I got a test. I need to go to the quarantine camp." And they go, and they're just quarantined. And so that seems to be how it works. I don't could Anne Frank really hide that well in an attic? I mean, for people that were really trying to get
now, I think sometimes they really do come and get you. It has happened, surely. But
maybe.
But I think the important point is most of the compliance is completely voluntary. And if people just didn't volunteer, the scheme wouldn't work at all.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I know it sounds a little callous to be like, "Did they ever come and get you?" But you have to remember, you're talking to a guy that doesn't believe that there's an international space station. So I'm sort of like, did anything ever?
Well, I found over time that the principles of your arguments are valid often, despite the correctness of the particulars.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yes, that's right. The correctness of I'm correct even if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Which is what I think everyone needs to understand. This is sort of like Muhammad Atta, really. He was correct about city planning. Even if he was wrong about his methods of reform.
Yeah.
Even if he was wrong about his methods of reform, he was correct about city planning. So, yeah. Did we tie everything together? No. I didn't explain why I screamed about Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, what was up with that?
Oh, well, I was thinking this week that we might be, because there's this idea going around. I think we might be living through the end of the nation state.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Into something else. And I thought, what could it be? Is it maybe neo-medievalism? Maybe. Here's the thing. So historically, this was an idea, to my knowledge, first promulgated by the late Phyllis Tickle. You know Phyllis Tickle?
I do not know Phyllis Tickle.
She was this lady.
Sounds made up, though.
It does sound made up. She was real. At least I think so. She was this lady, I think she died in 2014, 15, 16, somewhere in there. And she was a, Methodist maybe?
Okay.
Maybe Episcopalian. One of those. A Protestant with a hat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She's one of these Protestants that wear hats. And she wrote a lot of stuff about church history.
Okay.
And theology and stuff like that. And she was pretty good for a lady. Usually I'm down on female scholarship because they don't follow through like Muhammad Atta, right? They just talk. It's all talk. There's no action. But anyway, this book was pretty. She wrote some pretty good books, and one of them was called "The Great Emergence: How Christianity is Changing and Why." And in this, she promulgates this idea that Christianity, primarily, and then by extension, the quote unquote West, is on 500-year cycles.
Okay.
Right. So you've got every 500 years, we do what she called we have like a garage sale, and we take all of the culture that we have accumulated, and we say, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of this, keep this, get rid of that, get rid of that, keep that. Right. So 500 years from now, 500 years in the past, we have the Reformation, right? A big to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It changed the way Christianity operated. It changed the way the Catholic Church approached Christianity, even though it's not supposed to. It changed the way the Eastern Orthodox did. It changed the way Protestants did. It was a big to-do, the Reformation. This giant cultural swift. And with that really brings in the Renaissance. And so you have this Protestant Reformation, and then, so that's the Christianity change, and then that filters down to the West, quote unquote, at large, through the Renaissance, right? 500 years before that, more or less, give or take, you've got the Great Schism in about 1100, whatever you want to call it, where the Eastern Orthodoxy and the Western Church split up.
Okay.
Right? 500 years before that, you have Pope Gregory the Great, who we really don't think about that much now. His papacy was like in the year 500 or whatever. But he was really, not that he really did it, but he presided over what a lot of people would see as the beginning of the medieval period, and the collapse of the old order of like still influenced by Rome and the classical era and stuff.
Right. Yep.
So you've got these 500-year shifts where apparently Western people decide, it's long enough, we need something new. And so now we're in this is 500 years. We are due for a change. And so I was thinking, like, if that's true, and I think we are seeing it, I think we are in the middle of a big sea change. I think we are restructuring how we do government. I think culture's going crazy because we're trying to figure out what to do with it. The church is shifting in all kinds of ways. I mean, like Vatican II, like we had a whole thing about, it was a seismic shift in the Catholic Church. Protestant churches too have been like I think they're sort of been melding together almost.
In some ways, yeah.
Well, like years ago, being a Methodist was seen as very different from being like an Episcopalian.
Right.
But now a lot of people are just sort of vaguely Protestant. Like maybe they go to a Presbyterian church for 10 years, but then they move and like, hey, my new house, this Baptist church is right next to it. I'll go there. People don't really have this allegiance to like a thing.
Among the, I would say, scripturally based Protestant churches, there is a sort of a synthesis phase of theology going on. Right.
Yeah, I think so too. And so in some ways, and all across the board, I think the fervor of the Reformation, both against it, because like the modern Catholic Church, pre-Vatican II anyway, was largely defined as anti-Reformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the things that trads came to see of as like correct, I'm not saying they aren't correct. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's another discussion. But just they came into existence to combat the Reformation. Right? Or they were re-emphasized, or however you want to see it. But these sort of like, the sort of like hyper rigid structures of the Catholic Church pre-Vatican II came into existence partly as a reaction against the Reformation, right? So,
right.
But the fervor on all sides from that is gone. Like Protestants are not, they don't want to off with the heads of the Pope anymore.
No.
And the Catholics don't mind having guitars.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like they don't really, the fervor is gone. And so we have to re-up the fervor, right? It's 500 years and everyone has to churn it up and get excited about something again. And so I was thinking, like, what are we going to do now? And I think maybe the answer. And this is what Phyllis said too, and I think she's 100% correct here, as proved perhaps by the existence of our show and its name, is that what we're going to get rid of in this garage sale is rationalism.
About time.
Right? I think that because in some ways Protestantism was defined by an intense sort of rationalism.
It was.
Like John Calvin especially.
Yeah.
But you can understand that because it was reacting against a very superstitious period.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1200 to 1500-ish, I would say. People were mysticism which is good. I think mysticism is good, and mystical things are like, you need a certain element of that to be a complete person and have a complete religion and culture and all that. But that can decay into superstition. Yeah. And that seems to have happened during the late medieval period. Mm-hmm. Where like it wasn't just that like it wasn't just like the sale of indulgences, if you look at it. It was the way they were given out. Like, yeah, they were paying for them, which was bad. But it was also like, well, you get an indulgence if you're praying at the altar, facing backwards on a Wednesday with a rosary that's touched the relics of a saint from Burgundia on the Ides of March while wearing silk shoes that never touched a she-goat. Right? It's like this giant... Yeah. None of it made any sense. And that's an exaggeration, but in some cases, not much of one. It was this... The culture had decayed into a lot of superstition. And so they were reacting against that, right? But now we've gone too far. And I think all across the board, what you see is people feeling that rationalism is killing them because it brings with it scientism, materialism.
Yeah. Well, I think rationalism has descended into its own sort of superstition.
Correct. Exactly so. I think that's the exact way of looking at it. And so now people feel like, because it's gotten to the point where it's like life is nothing matters, everything's just atoms floating through space.
Right.
I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson. So people are throwing that away.
Yeah.
And people are all over the board going into more magical thinking. This show is an example of that. And I hope that this show shows people how to do that in a non-crazy way. Now, I realize I just said that the International Space Station doesn't exist. So, maybe I'm refuting myself. But I'm trying to do that so you can have magical thinking in a non-crazy way. And you can have reason in your mysticism, is what I hope to help people see, is that's an option. But if you look all around the board, people are like every white woman under the age of 30 believes that she can manifest cardigans or whatever. Right?
I got to tell my wife about this. She's going to be pumped.
They just sit and they think about it hard enough and they say affirmations, and then what they get happens. And the thing is, sometimes that does work. And I've talked about like why that is so. Like it's not for nothing. They all are into astrology, which again, we did a show on. Astrology is not completely nonsense.
Enneagrams.
Right. Yes. Yeah. People are all around all across the board embracing more magical thinking. Like there's even a segment of left-wingers who call themselves post-rats, meaning post-rational.
Right. Because
they think reason has lost its way. And so in some sense, I think that the COVID stuff is sort of like a reaction against that, because they're like, no, science is the savior, right? We can't lose the science and the rationalism. Everyone worship the science.
Interesting.
And a lot of people are afraid of the magical thinking for not unreasonable reasons.
Yeah, sure.
And so they're diving farther into trust the science. But what they don't see is that in doing that, they are, like you said, jumping into a decayed version of it.
Yeah, it's all fetishes and taboos and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they're jumping into what is to true rationality what superstition is to mysticism.
Yeah.
Like what they're doing is not reasonable or irrational, but they are aping it in hopes that we will not descend into a world where people think that if a gypsy looks at you sideways, she'll make you impotent, and then he hits you in the head with a hammer.
I think the main reason that some people are still wanting mask wearing, especially in situations where it's arguably legally voluntary, is because the act of everybody not wearing masks is symbolic of the reflection, the rejection of modern rationalism as superstition.
Yeah. And
so like if you won't wear a mask, you don't believe the science, and they're reacting to what they see as an apostasy.
Right. And that is that's why believe the science is the mantra.
Yeah.
And it's been that way, at least as far as I know, since the year 2000. That's when you had the rise of the new atheists. They've been pushing back against an increasing tide of people embracing magical thinking. And so they are fighting back very hard against it, but they will ultimately fail, because what they offer, what Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins has to offer, is a meaningless world without hope. And that's all they can ever give you.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's nice after you inject fentanyl into your gay lover in a hotel room after you run for Florida governor to not believe in God, because then you don't have to worry about punishments, right?
Well, this fetishized rationalism, it's bad for Christianity.
Oh yeah,
because the people that fall for this are the people that get embarrassed when you talk about creation and the flood and the miracles and all that stuff. That there's like this innate need to sort of paper over those things or to explain them away. It's like, no, if you really believe that an eternal, all-powerful God created the universe out of nothing, then you shouldn't have a problem with any of these things.
Exactly. And so it's killing secular culture, the rationalism. It's killing religious culture. It's killing all of it.
Yeah.
That's why it's on the way out and people are rejecting it, but that's why there's also at the same time a counter move to preserve it. Right? And I think, like I said, I think that it will not work. I think the 500 years the time is up, but the shift is always not clean.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to go back to a time of maybe magical thing, hopefully more mysticism, hopefully not complete superstition, right? I think we can re-embrace some of the weirder aspects of people's faith, right? I think
Well, for Christians, the Bible is there's a lot of magical sort of things in it, right? And you can't you can't have a complete Christian worldview without them.
No, it just doesn't work. And so what I thought, and I also believe that we may be headed toward something that some people describe it as, because as global structures break down a little bit, and I disagree with Moldbug, with Curtis Yarvin, and that this system can continue. I think we're in a sea change moment. I think that, and yes, he's correct that conservatives are always waiting for the collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's going to be but that's the thing. I don't think it's a collapse. I think it is it's a metamorphosis. It's a metamorphosis,
Okay.
The world didn't collapse when the Reformation happened or the Great Schism. It
didn't really collapse when Rome, quote unquote, fell either. No, I mean, we imagine like barbarians sacking the city and the lights going out, but that process took hundreds of years, and civilization went on. It just changed its centers and it changed its thinking and its culture. And the lights didn't really go out, Right. They just moved.
Right. Yes. And so I think maybe happening is I think we're going to see a move to what is called bioregionalism.
Okay.
Which basically is a progressive spin on hyperlocalism.
All right.
But I think that this is the logical extension of people's concerns which, like I've said before, I think are largely misfounded, but whatever. There's still real concerns they have about the environment. I think that we're going to see like also attempts at like climate lockdowns, climate travel restrictions, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And things are going to, the global nature of the world is going to constrict down to more local regions of the world. And this has a template ready-made for the progressive mind to accept. It doesn't have to be trad at all, even though it will be.
Yeah.
But it has a label on it, which is, because it's basically just farming.
Mm-hmm.
It's called bioregionalism, which is this proposal that the most just and equitable societies, both for people and for the environment and for nature, are ones which are connected to the local biome they're in.
Yeah.
Right? And so people that do this, they have all these, they've divided up, like, say, North America into all these regions like Cascadia, the Basin, Sonora, the Prairies, Dixon, the Boreal Forest, the Arctic, whatever, based on like watersheds and what kind of trees go there. And like, there's all these criteria, but like the idea is that these should be sort of self-contained. Otherwise you are harming the environment. And they have some good, I mean, it's not without merit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They make some points. Everybody has points. Muhammad Ali had points. They have some points. And so I think that maybe, hold on, I have COVID in my throat. There we go. Okay. I think that maybe we are, if we embrace hyperlocalism on top of a return to magical thinking, then we maybe have returned to a sort of neo-medievalism. Right?
Yeah.
Sort of. And so I screamed about the Oblivion 9 Divines because I think, this is my personal hypothesis, I can't prove this anyway, I think they were influenced by the Nine Worthies. I've talked about them before on the show one time, I think. Are you familiar with the Nine Worthies?
I don't recall the Nine Worthies.
The Nine Worthies were a late medieval period, what would you call them? They were a trio of trios.
Okay.
Of people who were viewed as the chivalric, noble, knightly ideal.
Right.
And these people were to be emulated by the men of the era in order to help guide their society through the tumultuous times. Right? And so these were like people that the medievals said, look to these guys if you want to know how to act.
Yeah.
And so I think that the Nine Divines in the video game were influenced by these Nine Worthies. For various reasons. I can't prove that, but I think that they had this in mind. And I think also that maybe that idea of like looking toward, if we're heading toward neo-medievalism, maybe we should seek to help men try to develop a more chivalric nature, a more knightly nature. Because what chivalry was trying to do was like marry, like, how do you be a good person and like love thine enemy, but also understand that sometimes there's a place for violence.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult needle to thread, right? Because it's like there is evil in the world. Sometimes you have to fight it, but also you have to love thy neighbor and also do good and protect the innocent and like not. And so the chivalry stuff was like, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it was not easy. But they had the Nine Worthies, and the Nine Worthies were a trio of trios. They were divided into 3 Old Testament heroes, three pre-Jesus heroes,
Mm-hmm.
3 Christian heroes, and 3 pagan heroes.
Okay.
That one could look at to try and emulate. So the pagans were Hector, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar.
All right.
The Old Testament Jewish ones were Joshua, David, and Judah Maccabee.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Christian ones were King Arthur, Charlemagne, and Godfrey of Bouillon, who may be the only one you don't know.
Yeah.
Godfrey of Bouillon was he was a French nobleman, and he was basically the leader of the First Crusade.
Okay.
And he was the first ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem after it was successful.
Cool.
And he served as a sort of bridge to the past because, like King Arthur, that was in the ancient. If he was real, he probably was based on someone real. But if he was sort of far away in the mists of Avalon history. Charlemagne at this point was probably 400 years in the past. Mm-hmm. But Godfrey of Bouillon was relatively recent, and so it was like he was there, like you can also join these ranks,
right?
And people would try. Noblemen in the time. Would try to do things that would earn them a spot in the Nine Worthies, and they would try to say like I am, like they would commission books and put themselves like as the 10th worthy and stuff. Huh. Which is why I suspected, because the 9 divines in the Elder Scrolls game, the last one, it was originally the 8, as everyone knows if you played Skyrim, but then Talos, the last one, gets added on because he's a human that's worthy enough to be joined. And that was the whole idea of the 9 worthies. So, if we are headed toward a neo-medievalism, maybe you should think about that. And also what you should think about is buying up bread.
Bread?
Yeah, I talked about, remember I made a tweet about this. We need
right.
to, yes, grow your own food. But also, what if, here's a solution for taking back the country from big corporations. What if you just bought stocks in all the commodities? Like, what if the middle class was encouraged culturally to own wheat stock or corn stocks or cows or whatever? And instead of like these big corporations owning most of the food in America, what if the middle class did? How much different could things be?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Like, I think, because here's a conservative position that I think should be not only championed, but it's just obvious common sense, is that the food of a country should be owned by the people of the country.
I like that.
Right? That should just be what they do. Because, lord, the term lord, which is a medieval term, means... It comes from the word loaf. A lot of people know that. The word lord comes from, I think it's half, which is where loaf comes. Halfwarden, which means loaf warden. It's the guardian of the bread, the keeper of the bread, the loaf warden. And the lord of a place was the guy that owned the bread that then you could eat from. And so, which is why they call God Lord, because he's give us this day our daily bread. It was the signal that all the bread ultimately comes from him, right? That's where that idea comes from. But so if whoever controls the food supply sort of default becomes the Lord. And so you're like, why do banks and corporations have so much power? Well, they own all the food supply. And maybe that's not good. And maybe the middle class has enough money that if it became a cultural thing, we're like, just every month or every year invest in wheat stocks or corn or whatever, that very soon you could own 50% of the market share, no problem. And I think that would take away a lot of the power of these companies. I'm not sure, but I think it may.
Well, you'd have to make your acquisitions in such a way that came with some kind of control, because you can buy commodities futures, but it doesn't really give you any control over what's done with the commodity.
It doesn't unless you have enough of them. Maybe you but by the same token, if like Montesano doesn't own 70% of it, they can't make big shots about it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is it's like, let's prevent the land from falling under control of Monsanto.
Yeah, you need to buy. I think maybe this is. I like crypto and stuff, and it's fun. But maybe we should focus on just buying things that are more tangible for a while.
Yeah,
land, farmland. Like the people should have the farmland. The people should have the land. That's really what makes them free or not. The people should have the food. Like a country of yeoman farmers that owns the food supply is really the free people.
There's a principle that's honored in the original Constitution and prior, where to be able to vote you had to be a landowner.
Right.
You know?
Right. So, and I think Muhammad Abdo would agree with that. I think that he would. Because he was a trad.
I don't know if you're helping your case, but okay.
I'm just saying. Just because someone does bad things, doesn't mean everything they thought was bad, right? Can we be mature enough to say that here? You know, like, are we gonna have our opinion about Lanky Elvis from his worst moment?
I don't know. What's his worst moment?
Well,
I mean, he killed all those animals from last show.
I know. Are we going? You know, so who's? Look, he was without sin cast the first stone, right? I'm just saying. We should probably end the show.
Okay.
Listen, I'm not excusing Muhammad Atta. You understand? I'm just saying.
You know who else didn't know how to land his plane?
Who?
Muhammad Atta.
That's right. That's right.
Just saying. Somebody send me a video of John Durham, please.
Maybe there's one. I don't know.